Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the final day of Mayhem in May. Yes, I know it is June, but quite frankly, I just do not care. And what else can I really say? Like, jubilation in June doesn't really matter. I don't understand. Anyway, so welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. I am Nate the Effing Great, and here, of course, for Elite Ringside Network, which you can always check us out on Facebook.com/ER Network 24/7, which is also our Twitter handle. How convenient. And I'm being joined here by the man, the myth, the legend, the monster himself of the Midwest, that being Sadist. How are you doing, good sir?
Good, man. How about yourself?
I am pumped for tonight. It's going to be an awesome show, and of course, pumped up for the show in July, but we'll get into more of that just a little bit. But kind of to start off the show, this is kind of always a question I like to start it off with anybody I have on, first time being on, get a chance to know them a little better. So first question is, what got you interested in professional wrestling? What got you hooked on it as a fan? And the second question, we'll kind of transition into it. What made you want to do it as a profession? What made you want to be a professional wrestler?
So I'll try to keep this story as short as I possibly can. It can get lengthy. I really didn't watch as a child. I wasn't, really into it when I was super young. My cousins were really into it in the Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior days. And I think I was just a little bit too young to really understand it. Didn't really follow it, didn't see it until in early high school. I think I was 15, maybe 14, something like that. A couple of my buddies were talking about Monday Night Raw, and to be quite frank, I was like, oh, you guys watch wrestling? Ha-ha. You're dorks. And what that turned into was them convincing me for one night only to watch Monday Night Raw. And it took some convincing, and I sat down that night by myself at my house.
Let me see here. Sorry, folks. We got a little bit disconnected there. We're going to try to see if we can reconnect just a minute. So, yeah, we got the ACW show coming up tonight. We got the WPW show. Oh, there we go. Well, honestly, don't worry about it, man, because here's the thing. It's not the first time that it's happened where a line's been cut off, so you don't have to worry about apologizing or anything. I can handle it naturally.
All right.
So we're good.
Fair enough.
So
where was I?
You're talking about watching Monday Night Raw for the first time.
Yeah. So my friends had convinced me to do so, and I watched it. I tried to be as objective as possible with this little piece in my mind saying this is lame. And the funniest part about the story, and a guy that I take a lot of influence from, I was introduced that night to Stone Cold Steve Austin. And he came out, and the first night I ever watched Raw as I guess I could consider an adult, was the first night he ever stunned Vince McMahon. And I did not understand it. I didn't know the whole backstory. I didn't know anything. But the next day I walked into school, and I was like, you guys have to fill me in. That was fucking awesome. Pardon my language. And I was so fired up about it, it became a thing where every single night that wrestling was on, we were over at a friend's house, one of our friend's house, and we were watching. And watched all the pay-per-views, did the whole thing where it was like $4 a piece because there was like 70 people at somebody's house watching the pay-per-view. And it just became kind of a lifestyle thing, and I appreciated it from an entertainment perspective. And towards the end of my high school career, I kind of looked at it and said, I appreciate this from an athletic perspective. And fast forward a little bit, I went through college without the idea that I was going to wrestle. And then towards the end of college, I started working out and just had this epiphany one day that I'm going to get my degree and I'm gonna try this. I had messed around a little bit in the Sable backyard wrestling and had a lot of fun doing that. And it was kind of just like something to get a taste for it. As much as people wouldn't like to hear it, that's an honest story, so I feel like it's part of it. And once I got my degree, it was a few months later, I decided to go get trained. I got trained by Shane Mills. I was very fortunate to grasp the things that he was telling me, and I learned very quickly. And instead of a year of training, I debuted in 6 months. And everything after that has been such a whirlwind, and I feel very fortunate to have been put in the positions that I have, and to be to have opportunities to be successful. I feel like I've capitalized on them, and I've taken those opportunities and made the best of them, because I know that it could have been anybody, and for some reason it picked me. So I love that part of the story. I like to stay level-headed and realize that, this is business, and there are other portions of wrestling that I always need to consider when I go out to perform. That a show may not be about me, about my character, but I need to make the best of my time while I'm there so that people remember me and my stock rises every time. And I guess another part of that, too, is that after all this time, it's been almost 10 years, I've had the ability in the last few years to give back to young guys, the Colin Brooks, the Adam Graves, and talk shop, talk theory with them, pose what ifs, blow their mind a little bit in some cases, but man, I love it. It's a great world, and it's very rewarding if you choose to let it be.
Well, I mean, yeah, you mentioned you had a lot of years of experience, so definitely, whenever a young guy is just thinking, what can I do to, create either a great character or create great matches, they're definitely going to come to the person that has the most experience, especially somebody who, honestly, there's not been a single time where I've watched you wrestle and thought to myself, well, he had an okay matchup. Every single time it was just like, oh my gosh, that match with Sadist was just insane. And at least one or two times I thought to myself, he probably killed this guy. So, well, nice to know that this guy had a really fortunate career until this point. So,
hey, perception is reality, right?
This is true. So you mentioned a little bit that you did a little bit of backyard wrestling, and I actually dipped my hand in the backyard wrestling deal too. We actually had like a trampoline and a little bit of a big backyard, and we tried so many different things. What was your experience like with the whole backyard wrestling deal? Was it just kind of cheesy, or was it just kind of one of those things when it's, did you try to legitimize it, or was it just one of those things where it's like, let's just have fun with it, and whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, so the backyard wrestling thing actually happened, Ben McCoy had taken. He's the first guy I ever met on the indie wrestling scene. And he, at that point in time, may not like me saying this, was backyard wrestling, just prior to him being trained. And he was working at a Best Buy at that point, and walks up to me, who I was looking at DVDs of pay-per-views from WWE from 2000. Just the first question he asked, in typical Ben form, hey man, you like wrestling? All fired up. I was like, yeah man, I do. I'm looking at wrestling DVDs, so yes, I do. And he just threw the question out there and said, never thought about doing it. And 2 weeks later, I was wrestling. As much as a lot of people would, not like to hear that, Shane Hill, my trainer specifically, he knows that story, he hates that story, but that's where it was. That's where it all started. And, that atmosphere was different. It wasn't about, as you may know, it's not about psychology. It's about making your friends pop, getting your friends to go, oh, shit, I can't believe you did that. You're not even getting paid, and we're in somebody's backyard. And it's crazy because, looking at it now, it has made me who I am as a performer. And I don't know that I would change it, but I do have those times where I sit back and think, like, man, some of that stuff is really stupid. Down to the point where, like, we got a ring. We got, like, an official High Spots ring, and we were running shows that drew the same, girlfriends and parents, but still, it felt more official. And, once that taste came, it was one of those things where I realized, now I have to do something with this. I think that there's more here, and Dylan actually scouted me. I was at a WWE house show, and Colucci and a couple of the other guys were there, and they said, hey, Dylan wants to talk to you. And Dylan just looked at me and said, got a good look. I want to see what you can do. Go get trained. Knowing full well that I'd have to go pay for it, come out of pocket, and I'd have to grind if you wouldn't see me for, at that point, possibly a year. But still something I wanted to do, something I pursued. And getting a blessing from somebody that you have watched on TV and look up to because of the position they're in. There's a level of trust right there, and I'm really glad that I listened.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy just dealing with that kind of deal. I remember last month when I saw Ken Anderson. He was definitely one of those guys. Well, Mr. Anderson, I should say.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah, don't call him Ken.
Yeah. Please don't give me a mic check, dude. I love your work, and but no, it was just really cool. Honestly, just going up to somebody like Mr. Anderson and just shaking his hand, getting a chance to talk to him a little bit, and just thinking, this is one of those guys I really definitely wanted in my top 5 people to either interview or to talk to or just get a chance to actually get to know, and just getting something that deal where it's just like, oh hey, how you doing, man, and just. In that I was actually saying this to a lot of people. I was like, wow, he's a lot nicer than I thought he would be. I mean, on TV, of course, I've learned this the hard way that, on TV it's different than in real life where it's just like, on TV, oh gosh, they seem like they could be such bitter assholes. But when you meet them in real life, it's just like, oh wow, they're like the nicest people I have ever really thought that I would actually get a chance to meet. But yeah, that's awesome getting, props from Dylan to, Swoggle, for those of you that don't know who we're talking about, breaking kayfabe here. Yep. But yeah, just to get that. So obviously, you get that props from Dylan, and you went out and you got trained by Shane. What was that like for you? Just like the first day of your training, what was that like? Because I know a lot of people have said, it's definitely a different transition going from like the backyard deal to an actual wrestling ring.
Well, and so the primary difference from going to get trained in backyard wrestling is the fact that I had to switch my mindset from I'm not doing this. Eventually the result is fun, but I'm doing this now to learn it, to make it right, so that I don't hurt somebody, so that there's not, so I don't look back and think, wow, I messed that spot up or that thing, that match, because I didn't know how to do it. I'm not gonna lie, man. I talk to Shane about this every once in a while, and he'll even pull me aside in front of the group. Okay, hey, tell the story about your first training camp, right? So I drove from Wisconsin Rapids, a place that you're likely very familiar with, all the way over to Manitowoc on I believe it was a Sunday. I had to leave the house, I think, at 5 o'clock in the morning to get there on time.
Jeez.
Met up with Shane. We drove to his place then, which his old training camp was badass because it was an abandoned old meat locker.
Wow.
And the ring was in there, and there was environmental hazards, and it felt very kind of like, this is where you earn your stripes, and it definitely was. That first training camp was 5 hours of trying to break me, and I never told him to his face that day or any time right after that, but I told him later that he did break me that day because I got out of there, and it was to a point, I'm not lying, I puked, and I puked from exhaustion. My legs physically did not work anymore. I couldn't get off the ground, I couldn't walk, I couldn't run, and it's just because, that's the kind of test, and I'd like to tell people it doesn't get easier, you get used to it. Just like you build up a callus on your hands, you build up a callus in the ring.
Right. Wow.
And man, I had it was a 3-hour drive, a 5-hour camp, and a 3-hour drive home. And that 3-hour drive home was 3 hours of me sitting there thinking to myself, what the fuck am I doing with my time? My body was wrecked and hurt, and it's sore like it's never been sore. And instantly, once you kind of decompress a little bit and the adrenaline wears off, you realize you're not in that atmosphere anymore. Everything changes. Reality does it, And I sat back and I thought about it for a couple of days, and the next Sunday I showed up, and then I showed up the next Sunday, and then it became routine. It was one of those things where it wasn't that bad, even though I think I've got a record for puking the most times. Funny story, Stacey Shadows brings this up all the time. There was one point where we were probably 45 minutes into a camp. I rolled out of the ring, and I started puking. And I did for a good 5 minutes. And she looked at me and she goes, dude, what's wrong with you? And the way she described it, she does it. You have to ask her sometime. But I looked, tears in my eyes, puke dripping off my face. And I said, I don't even know what's happening. It was that kind of dig deep kind of situation for me, and it's that training experience itself taught me so much about who I am and what I'm capable of, and I think wrestling in general has changed my outlook on life and the fact that wrestling was something that I wanted to do not not even in the outset. I didn't say I'm going to go get trained so I can get to WWE. It was something I wanted to do to be good at for fun. And the fact that I was able to go through that, be successful, and, you know, in my eyes, keep a level head. If I'm wrong, please tell me. I'd love to correct that. But you know, look at myself and reflect on the fact that I've gone through that. I've wrestled for 10 years. I haven't had any serious injuries. I feel like I'm doing it right. I feel like people are getting their money's worth that they tell me that they are. And that's really my primary concern at this point in my career, is that I live up to the expectation that I've created every single match. I either meet or exceed that. And that's my biggest concern when it comes to how I present myself in the ring.
Wow. I definitely respect that. I respect that quite a bit. Yeah, and like I've said before, you know, there hasn't been a single matchup that I've watched that you've had where I've either said, you know, well, he could have done better with this, or you know, he was better when he did this show or something like that. No, every single time there was always that standout moment where it's just like, holy cow, this matchup with Sadist was just amazing. It just really is just amazing. I mean, of course, you know, for you being like, you know, a guy of bigger stature, being like, you know, you probably fit in perfectly, like in the Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage area where, you know, they're all like big muscly guys and stuff like that. But, you know, nowadays a lot of people are looking at, you know, the more younger, the smaller pie flying deals. But whenever I hear, you know, your name is on the card, I'm like, dude, you are going to not want to miss this matchup because this guy delivers immensely. So I definitely want to ask this question. So the first point show that you got Wisconsin Pro Wrestling did was obviously in your hometown of Stevens Point, and you main evented against your opponent tonight, which we'll definitely get into a little bit later, Joey Avalon, and you again main event quality, just definitely really, you guys delivered really well that night, and you definitely cut one of the best promo, not only promos, but also talk to the people saying, you know, this is where I grew up, this is where, you know, everything happened, and just awesome. So just kind of talk a little bit, you know, what was it like just to perform in front of, you know, everybody at Stevens Point? Because obviously when you're at another show, it's like, you know, no added stress, you know, it's just another random people I'm probably not going to see anywhere. But when you're at a hometown show, that's going to add more pressure to you to do a lot better.
Yeah, it really was. I felt very nervous, and I get nervous in a different way now. In my time wrestling and becoming comfortable, my nervousness comes in. You know, how is this going to get a reaction? Is this going to be as over as I want it to be? Because you may notice that everything I do has a purpose, and I really am big about, like, let's create a moment. And if there's one thing that people can take away from one match, that's kind of what I strive to do. And this is kind of a side note, but I really feel like there's good wrestling and bad wrestling, and there's kind of a cut and dry line, black and white. But the side of good wrestling is blurry because what is good to one is not to another. It depends on a personal preference. So, you know, I've kind of always taken that into consideration of doing that. But that night specifically was one of those nights where I really wanted to, you know, that there were people there that from my family, friends that have never seen me wrestle, people that haven't seen me in 10 years. My thought was, man, I really, you know, I value my relationship with these people. They're coming to show support in my hometown. I need to show them what I've been doing for 10 years, why this is important. And so, you know, the epic knockdown, drag-out war that me and Avalon had was necessity that night. The promo afterwards, I grabbed the mic, and it was one of those things where it wasn't something I was told, you know, hey, send them home happy or anything. That was all very real, very raw. And I felt that moment, and it was great. I loved it. The second time around was just as good. Just definitely not as much heartfelt moments there. It was, that was definitely business that night.
Yeah, I do recall. Yeah, the second show that you attended with your match with Rough Crossing, which was again just absolutely amazing. I mean, two big guys going out there and just almost tearing each other to shreds. But getting a little bit into, you know, what happened after the matchup, where you basically said, you know, for the longest time I've been the guy that's, you know, just been given an opponent, be like, you know, we're going to give you this guy to work with at, you know, this event be in Stadium Mania next month in July. But this time around, you said, I want to pick who I want to face. And probably one of the greatest moments that even everybody in the group, I think you basically could see in the corner of your eye, just either me and a couple other friends were just like shouting, like, oh my gosh, is this happening? Where you just call out Logan Lynch and you make the challenge for him and you at Stadium Mania this upcoming July. That was, again, you talk about making memorable moments. That was an unforgettable moment because now you have the future against the monster of the Midwest at one of the biggest shows of Wisconsin pro wrestling. I still get a little bit of goosebumps just thinking about it because just imagining the two of you in the ring is just like, oh dear Lord, that's gonna be a match made in heaven right there. I am looking forward to seeing that matchup. But yeah, what prompted you to call out Logan Lynch to make this challenge for Stadium Mania?
Quite frankly, all of the talk, everything everybody said, everybody that works with Logan, I've worked with Logan, and I said the exact same thing everybody did. He's got something special. He's a good hand, and he's one of those guys that kind of has that whole package. And after I worked him the first time, it kind of sparked some interest, and then I kept hearing comments that I thought Point was a great place because I could say whatever I wanted and I wouldn't be booed. But it was one of those things where, let's gut check the guy because everything everybody was saying about him was stuff that people had said about me. And as much as I want to see guys have opportunities and stuff, I look at it like there's only one guy like me. And I need to find out if, I can't do this forever. Is whatever company I'm working for in good hands somebody they can expect the same quality out of?
Wow. I never really thought of it like that, but you know what? That just makes the matchup even more intense, and it's going to make me want to see that match. And honestly, it's probably going to be a match of the night, in my opinion. But we still got one more event before we get into Stadium Mania, so we'll see what else gets built up onto the card. But also let me ask this question: the Monster of the Midwest. How did you end up with that nickname per se?
All right. So, are you familiar with Bruce City Wrestling?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Let's go back early in my career, first 2 years. First year, just kind of was in a spot at North Bruce City. Debuted in January, I think, of 2011 in Bruce City. Immediately decided that I was going to go into business for myself. And my first night there, attacked the guy that was supposed to be a tag partner to establish that I wasn't there to mess around. I wanted to hold gold there. And I pretty much went on a reign of terror, laying on everybody, leaving bodies strewn all over the place. Mind you, at this point in my career, I'm a 300-pound dude. And big, nasty, spitting, snorting, screaming at people, doing what I do. And all of a sudden I get informed that they're going to bring a fist in. And he's going to stop. And so May, I think, 2011, I wrestled a fist. One of the most physically intense matches I've ever been in. It was a great experience just overall, backstage atmosphere. That he's a great guy, but he steps into the ring with he brings it. And I brought so much during that match that the fans started calling me the Monster of the Midwest because he was the Monster of this. And they started putting me in line with how they viewed him, which I was very flattered by. And the promoter there, Frankie, and Matt the Booker said, I really think you need to run with this. That's a great nickname. And so, yeah, that's where it was born. Wow.
Wait, are you sure that you were facing Abyss or were you facing Joseph Parks? Because I think a lot of people get confused by the two of them.
This was Hulkamania Hall of Fame wearing ring Abyss.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I had to make sure because I know a lot of people are just saying, like, are Joseph Parks and Abyss the same thing? It's like, well, depends on your perspective, really. But I had to double check to make sure. So, so throughout your career, you've had to have so many matches, and you definitely hit it during the Last Point show where you talked about, Rough Crossing, one of your best guys. You talk about Joey Avalon being one of your best guys you worked with. But, if you could pick, obviously it's really hard for people to pick, one matchup in particular. But if you could pick either a match, maybe a couple matches or a couple rivalries, what matches would you say definitely are, in your opinion, your best, and people should definitely look at you if they want to see Sadist at his best?
Yep. So I'll save Avalon for last. Maybe we can segue with it. So some of my favorite feuds of all time, I think top ever was against Xavier Mustafa. And I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is a legit 400-pound, massive human being that has the ability to throw me around against my will. And he and I had such chemistry that we were kind of locked together for 7 months. Every time we had a match, it was better, and both just kind of got each other. And so that feud or that rivalry was one of my all-time favorites. As for specific opponents, anytime I get to step in the ring with Justin Dredd, it is magical. The size difference comes into play, really helps to kind of create moments, create wow factor thing. He can reverse anything I do. And the fun part about it is I can catch him in the air on anything he's doing and drop him on his head. So that creates some very dynamic moments. Good thing here. As for young kids, this isn't a rivalry or match that I've had, but I'm really excited for an opportunity to wrestle Adam Grace one-on-one.
Oh, jeez.
He's another one of those guys like Lynch that where he says it's a good hand and everything. And it's one of those things where I just kind of look from the sidelines and I say, well, one day that's going to happen. I get to see. But Belushi's another one that I love getting in the ring with. He and I, the physicality that we bring, did a whole feud within ACW at the end of last year. That essentially us just beating the hell out of each other. Because we both felt one way or another, and felt like we needed to try to teach each other that way. So it played out very, very well for the fans. But as heated as that got, as real as that was, I can now look back at that feud and say, okay, well, we can agree to disagree. I still respect him as a human being, as a competitor. So.
Right. So,
and then there's Avalon. I have what I'd like to consider, and we've talked about this a couple times, we have a forever feud where it seems like it's over, it's just a lull because we're going to come back. And, there's a lot that rides on tonight's match. In April of, 2015, we had a match. It was the only ACW match we ever had. It's 30 minutes, and both of us dug deep and kicked out of everything under the sun because we both wanted it. It was very unsaid at that point, contrary to tonight, but whoever won that match was going to move on to bigger and better things. And that match itself was voted as the ACW Match of the Year. I unfortunately lost that match. After all that digging deep and going back and forth, he opted to kick me in the dick and pin me afterwards. And that's how it all ended, after 30 minutes. And for me, as a person, as a character, competitor, to sit back and look at that match and think that I'm walking in tonight to basically, and there's more stakes tonight because, I coined the term undisputed number one contender, and that's because there is a dispute. I was told that I'm number one contender. He lost the belt. He has his return title match. Can't make it. These two guys are going to find out who the real number one contender is going to happen tonight. And the nice part about it for me is that I look at it as an opportunity, and it's kind of an eye-opening experience for me too, because if I can beat him tonight, I not only become number one contender, but I right the wrongs of April 17th, 2015, and I move on to a place that I've never been, and that's a singles match for the ACW Heavyweight Championship.
Man. Once again, just giving me goosebumps just thinking about that. When you build that kind of a story, it makes me look forward to this matchup even more. Of course, you guys, you can always check it out. ACW is tonight at the Oshkosh Masonic Center. Do not miss out on this event. Do not miss out on this main event. 2 years in the making. And with this kind of build-up, you can't write this. You really can't write this. This is just one of those things where it just coincidentally happened to work in this way. And with this final blowout, this could be again another match of the year quality deal. So definitely check that out tonight. So before we
can I throw one more comment down about tonight?
By all means.
All right. So late last year, I got done with what wrestling likes to call a program, a heat with Nick Colucci, like I said, and we were able to shake hands afterwards. And after that was over with, I sat back and I said, you know what? This is the one belt. This is the one belt that's awarded me. I've never held the ACW Heavyweight Championship. And quite frankly, I have theories in the fact that I've never challenged for it, and that's the only reason I haven't held it. But that night, and I've never said this publicly, this is the first time, I said that if I had to stack the bodies of everybody in ACW so I could find them to get to the heavyweight champion, I was going to do it. And since December of last year, I am undefeated. Nobody's beaten me. And I'm one step away to getting to that goal. So, consultation prize for Avalon, he gets to be in the main event, but I'm going to step on his body so I can stand face-to-face with Cat next month.
Oh, wow. Now I just went from goosebumps to taking my breath away. Holy cow. Honestly, hands down, you guys, this is probably the best interview I've ever had. And for him to draw that kind of emotion tells you how good he is at his work. So, of course, you guys check that out tonight. But, of course, anything else that you would like to really plug for upcoming appearances that you might have or any other wrestling shows that you'll be attending?
Big one tonight, ACW in Oshkosh. Tomorrow night I'll be here at WCW. I believe next month on the 22nd, ACW is back in Canners and Kimberly. And I don't know if I'm spoiling anything, but I have a strong feeling that the ACW Heavyweight Champion is going to be there that night for the 2000. And then on July 29th, I will be competing against Logan Lynch at State of Attention.
Oh, boy. So we are just about to wrap it up. So before we go, I have to ask this one question because I've always asked this, and I feel like it's always the best question to just close off any wrestling interview with. So when you look back on your career and, you're riding off into the sunset, you're finally done with everything that you've ever wanted to accomplish, what do you want people to remember you for the most when you look back on the career of Sadist?
On the career of Sadist, well, I'm going to add a layer to that.
All right.
I've always said that I refuse to be the guy that people say he used to be really good. And the idea that I don't want to hang on longer than I need to or lose a step. I will, to the dismay of a lot of people, leave wrestling at the top of my game. I'm 35 years old. I can't do this forever. That's a reality. I want people to look back and say, man, that guy gave me some memories. Do you remember the time this happened? Do you remember when he won this? Do you remember this or that? And outside of that, when people get to pull back the curtain and after the show, I can get out of my boots and out of business mode and just be myself, that I was approachable, I was a nice dude, I was a real person, and just had an insane drive to be the best that I possibly could be at the sport.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, I think if I could sum up your career in one thing, I can sum it up like this, where it's like, oh, do you remember that one time where Sadist killed fill in the blank? And something tells me that blank is going to get filled with Joey Avalon tonight here, guys, for the ACW shows. So that is going to wrap it up for this interview. Of course, concluding Mayhem in May. Yes, it's in June, I know, so sue me. So thank you again, Sadist, for taking the time to do this interview, and best of luck to you tonight against Joey Avalon.
Absolutely, man. Luck is for losing, so I'm sitting well there.
Well, of course, guys, we'll be there for ACW. It's going to be awesome. Be sure to tune in a little bit later where I will have the final interview with the real Brock Hall and attending ACW's show tonight. Can't miss it. Just go get tickets and go come see this show, because it is just not going to be one of those regular wrestling shows. It is going to be Wrestling Wisconsin personified. So thank you guys so much for joining us here. And for Sadist, I am Nate the Effing Great. Seeing you later on. Bye-bye.